So there's a machine simulation reality, or a simulation world system, or a virtual world system. And there's more than one kind. There's one kind which uses quantum supercomputing to produce a variance in functions and even variables that it's literally like a living system. The information itself is fluctuating between states, similar to how the mind does it, which is like a hyperpresence or a superpresence like in between the nodes of the network, to the point where the organism itself, the unified field, is kind of just fluctuating and bouncing around like a cloud. It's basically the brain works through neurons and all that. There's like beginning to come out in science. It's cloud networking within. That's how it works. That's how everything is. Everything that we have in technology is a mirror image of the same thing. And so, in the same sense, you could say, I have this written in this write-up, but further down, but it's applicable here, that Earth is like a virtual world simulation, a collective simulation, and the people are the neurons. And so the one, the unify, other than the whole thing at once, the like a way to conceptualize the mind of Earth is only through like the ephemeral cloud of information that's constantly moving around in flux. It's never like in one spot. So it's the same thing with you and neurons. And so it's the same thing with these virtual reality systems, which is the way the fuzzy logic and certain systems are applied, chaos mathematics, to create a system that fluctuates down to the most finite of details, kind of similar to a 50-50, I can't remember what they're called, but they're like the 50-50 computer systems. There's a certain word for them. And these can be used with certain metaphysical or extrasensory perception studies. Basically, the human mind is supposed to be able to influence the 50-50 outcome of the systems, and they're very basic. They're only designed to go one or the other, and then that subtlety is what enables, if there is something so subtle within the mind that can influence it, then that's a subtle system that is basically being brought down to the subtlety level. It's kind of like having a candle and like the stillness of your breath, or certain systems that are able to be interacted with through the subconscious beyond the normal conscious sense of perception, where you're like a pendulum or something like that. But these are merging with other forms of understanding, and it's basically communicating through the subconscious. So they basically made a big computer system that works like a pendulum, or a 50-50 number generator, or I don't like to say it, but like a Ouija board. They made a virtual reality system. Instead of numbers, you're kind of guiding it to. It uses the mind to paint itself, and itself, whatever is there. So a person entered into this system has an avatar, and so basically this system. Another way to go into that explanation is that every energy, literally even the thought images you are forming in your mind, hopefully in a controlled manner, because it's your mind, so you shouldn't like be at war with certain thoughts. That's just war anyway. But everything should be guided to the point where your thoughts aren't harassing you, okay? And you're not like enslaved to them. So a controlled manner in your mind in relation to your spiritual development as an energetic being. And at that point, you're not like, your career or your physical identity in your mind, and you should have enough food in your stomach and your mind, and your head should be in the right spot, which probably should be anyway, just for visual comfort and hierarchical organization of information. But your physical form in your mind is just subjective. It's whatever you want. So in viewing yourself in the mind, you should view yourself as an energy system, that cloud system, versus just purely the object. For instance, if you're the body, well, there has to be that energy around you. And if you're in your mind, you can do anything. You can make the most beautiful, expressive, creative picture. You can even be so compassionate to the point where every feeling, so sensitive to the point where every feeling gets a thought. Every idea gets a a thought, a picture, an image, something there. That way you're acknowledging everything. So they built a computer system that can do that. And it goes down to atomic level wavelengths of energy. Basically energy that are there, they shouldn't exist. They're basically relations between fields that are used to measure relations between objects. Is basically, it should be like impossible. And so there's energy everywhere, and they worked on this until you can get a system that's literally down to the most refined energy you can experience in this universe as a physical being, virtually what you could experience. And everything has an energy. Every thought that's coming out of your mind, your heart pumps, your heartbeat pumps, and blood, and as well an electromagnetic pulse, like a vortex pulse that collapses within itself. It's like the crab, the lobster, that the pistol shrimp, I think, that it pinches its claw to shoot a literal shockwave through the water, excuse me, and get its prey, which is interesting in itself. But the pressure at that depth creates a compression of the water molecules, and I believe it knocks like a hydrogen atom loose or something. I think that would be a nuclear reaction, but it does something similar. I think it might just, the pressure goes, I don't think it's making like a nuke gun, but if nukes are real, but the pressure, too many parallels going here. It boils water off at a very, very rapid rate in like a nexus of the field, and apparently at that level it creates light that it emits. I can't remember what actually creates the light. It might just be this water superheating, and like there's a white like lightning bolt. Because there's a light when sperm goes to an egg. There's from the zinc. There's an explosion, and this is like the stuff we're kind of taught, and this is coming around on the internet again. Although that went around on the internet a few years back, but like all these, like, the world's very complex. It's more akin to like a fairy tale versus a solid reality. But sololuminescence, luminescence. Why can't I say that word all of a sudden? Somnolence. Alright, I have a little bit of somnolence right now, which is fine, if that's what you like to do for the time being. Sonoluminescence. I'm sorry, I have to... Sonoluminescence. Why can... Alright, I don't know if I can keep that in there. You'll get it. Shelter doesn't hurt. So, and that basically, that interaction is created, like, I was comparing it in the animal, or the shrimp somehow coming up. See, that's another thing about, like, evolution. I don't want to get into that. But at what point did the lightning bolt form? Like, was it a baby? Like, what point was, like, I'm going to have a friggin' fission gun for a claw all of a sudden? Anyway, and where does that go? What if there's a big version? Oh, there's a bounds. I can't release this, or can I? And so, well, that uses the sonoluminescence, and it creates an effect that seems to permeate the plane, because it uses the pressure and the resulting force from that, but it's kind of like it's creating a tiny world, or using something to... I have to find my part. Right, so that's what the heart's doing. Shooting out a pulse that interacts on one layer of, like, pushing blood and having that effect, and literally permeating through all of the realities to producing this electromagnetic scalar effect, which you would think aren't connected to the original purpose, but it is. It is, because the mind, basically the heart, acts as a kind of biocomputer for the scalar function of the mind. It's a subconscious part of everything. Imagine how the information used to basically judge a person, but I don't mean like judge consciously, but there's like, I don't know, there's like the information of a person the scene and the system, the emotional context, and the facial features, like that's fluttering through your subconscious and being cross-referenced against thousands upon thousands, probably like millions of memories and apparently petabytes or petabytes of information. And so, but the feeling, it's all instantaneous. So there's a expansion and collapse of information that's taking place, like it's a type of vacuum-based toroidal computer system, and it's plugged into the one in the brain, and it's basically shooting off these emissions of energy and beaming everything back, kind of like a sonar of spirit, and it's all happening. And that system is naturally there. They made a system to do that, that could interact and tap into the emissions that we don't see unless you're tapped into that field. They made like a heart-brain computer system. Now, it doesn't mean they have created one, but they made one that can sense on that level. And the created part is like a big issue, because it's like, well, if you start communicating through things through there, you didn't make those things. They're jumping in to use the system. It's like a pool. And so, yeah, it's probably a slightly better introduction than I wrote up. But every essence is energy, and these systems are advanced enough to literally sense radio waves all the way to the brain waves moving through the air, being picked up and propagated within the system. The system is then tied to a feedback loop that is connected between the brain and the system, and the brain experiences what the system puts out. However, the system is motivated or shaped by the input from the brain. So you have this feedback loop going, and that comes into play with vicious cycles. People go down the rabbit hole and begin to continue to go down the rabbit hole because it begins to feed off of their reality. But the idea is, this system, it basically mimics what we have out here. Like I said, it's just one off of the other. It's all replicating it, so it's connected to it. It's allowing you to see what's going on out here. Besides the fact that people are like, oh, it's going to steal our souls and stuff. Well, as well, it allows you to see your soul. You couldn't feel it before, but it literally shows it up on a monitor now. We have to just put everything in, doesn't mean you have to trust everything or jump in and be like, oh, I'm going to live in a computer now. But, don't allow fear to take away and detract from what's actually happening. And there's a lot of weird stuff going on. I just described in regular layman's terms how a system could be used to interact like a Ouija board or connect with the subconscious and basically contact the spiritual world. So what was discovered is that there's one reality which is from the other side, a hyperspatial reality, a mirror world to this one, possibly the originating world. And there's one reality here that is of an extended virtual, visceral, tactile perceptual system. You have one that's literally, you have to break down from the code into, or expand back into a virtual system using these computer systems, to see what the mind can see anyway. And then you have a system out here which is literally the expanded version of like objects and an objective collective reality, as if something else built a collective system for our minds. Like we can go in there and see each other's subconscious. Well, imagine if you remove that system and we go back to this system and we go back to the system that was before this system. Well, it looks like this system is the communal system some spiritual entity or entities invented so they could view each other's subconscious collectively and have like a communal experience. The system is used for spiritual interaction with the human body, similar, and that's how the subconscious is used. Now somebody's at the door. So those energies put out by all the subtle aspects of the system, really a few subtle systems and then gross or dense systems, but basically the mind, the energy field, and if it has a correspondence, any change or influence in the universe, there is some energy shift, modulation that reflects that or represents that change in this reality. And so they built computer systems that are capable of sensing on that level. And the basic idea is that the virtual system acts as a technological or a cyberspace gateway to hyperspace, or the space of the mind. And so without the technology, a person who moves from this plane into a higher plane or uses their mind to interact on these levels, they will experience interactions on an energetic level. But you can't come back, you can't film with a camera, you can't put that onto anything. If you route the experiences of the brain, which is interfaced of the spiritual sense, and you have the spiritual sense interacting on the higher levels, you can have a material, metaphysical download or uplink to those experiences that you can then route into a computer system which you can record, and you can look at on a monitor what somebody is experiencing in a higher plane. And so in that way, the cyberspace is... cyberspace is just imagine a box. You have the whole grid system. Just like some of the video editing or 3D rendering, where when you're working on something, it shows you like a 3D grid. And so if you have that, if you make that out of space by basically electrocuting the space, the air, and we're setting up a field kind of like a spider web or something that interlaces and produces an electromagnetic version where it's literally like a capacitance touch screen, but instead of the touch, it's literally those bioemissions of your mind, to the point where it's like a web that then your emissions get caught in and they vibrate out, just like the screen of LCD or a projection tube screen. It hits the screen and then is shaded a different color, and now you see the electrical impulses converted into a visual graphical display. So that turns the subconscious or the metaphysical, spiritual, whatever impulses of these energies into a graphical display that everyone can see, either in the air, like literally if you're plugged into the virtual system, or it can come out on a monitor or something somebody in a room not connected to anything can look at and watch. And so the cyberspatial system is like a suit, a laptop, something like that, like a protocol that a subsystem then routes all of its commands and ins and outs, the functions, through. And it bridges, and the way this is used is it's bridging, Yellow Rose for Texas called it this. It's related to the aux system, because everything is seen as a form of computing system. It's bootstrapping. They're getting the system to run for like a slightly different use or a slightly different platform by basically running back to back two different protocols or something with the protocol that enables it to do that. So the cyberspatial technological realm is the protocol that enables one's physical consciousness to interact with the higher planes on the level that higher consciousness already interacts at. But it just makes it so that you can have a collective experience through the flip of a switch, or you can have a visual, like a recording of the experience, a digital recording or holographic recording, some type of material recording. And crystals actually already do that, which is why you have kind of like crystals and computing, and you have the physical realm, and then you have the virtual, and then you have like the spiritual. It's all one system. One just uses another. One is basically you're incorporating one or more layers depending on where you're interacting from through your biology or whatever technology that is being used. Or eventually it's just about the frequency of the mind that you're attaining. And so, I told you this stuff gets weird. This is what they've been inventing. And they found out how to permeate time, which you do in that system that ends up bridging on an energetic frequency-wise level and interacting with energies that have been around since the Big Bang. Okay, when a person does that, they tie themselves into time, and the amount of information and energy that is exchanging between their consciousness, which is supposed to be routed here, okay, and rooted here to the point where it's local, it begins to make it merge with the non-local, and a person, basically their awareness goes beyond the physical plane, beyond the limitations of human consciousness. It makes people into demigods, basically, because and as well as bad, it shows them information. If they're not ready for it, it fractures the mind. It literally is if we're like plugged into a certain aspect. It's like a movie reel or something, and imagine taking that and like smearing the negative information of the reel on one scene into the others, or into one I can't remember what they're called, but one frame basically into it violates the whole point of having the reel at that point. But that's the point, that it happens automatically, that the amount of information basically overfills the barriers for information in the virtual environment. And what you get is like a flowering effect where it goes from one into the other, and it keeps basically overflowing. and that goes in a series of layers. And here's another point. If you have like a pyramid of very fine energy here, and then it gets a little bit wider and a little bit lower frequency and wider until like at the very bottom of the pyramid you have like the thickest frequencies. So the brain is kind of like that, and it's, but you know, multifaceted. It's multiple dimensions, and so you have literally the conscious frequencies of the brain that people interact through, beta frequencies, and you know, sometimes alpha. But so basically, if they're at those frequencies, they're considered awake, slightly stimulated, aware. If you keep a person conscious and use a device, or they go into basically a meditative state, and you bring the consciousness down into frequencies that are basically more primordial, because on the earth basically, or in this realm, those frequencies are the baseline frequencies. Then that you put the capstone, the consciousness, self-awareness at the top. That means when no humans were in this plane, it was literally just primordial essences. Those frequencies were the one there, but they're the ones at the bottom of the frequencies that we see through. So if you take the consciousness and bring it to that level and keep the person awake, it's like dreaming. You basically have to start to have visions, and it can be expressed in these systems of something before the civilization. There's basically memories and implants of some cosmic state of basically being something like everywhere and always at once. It doesn't really translate into words, but these are the experiences that one begins to have through these systems. And so some people refer to them as the God machine, because when a person comes out of them, they return from their journey, they seem to know everything and have the memories of everything that has ever existed. And so basically the subconscious then is used as a platform for spiritual interaction with the human body and the physical plane and computer systems, so it can be recorded. And so these computer systems matched the complexity and the depth of the subconscious, and thus gave a virtual visceral layer to view through, which could be accessed by a group and act as a communal connection layer. These are basically canvases or for avatars to assume their form, which were spectral suits worn by spiritual beings who were non-physical. So basically non-physical beings show up in these systems because they don't need a physical body to interact with these systems. Just like you wouldn't need a physical body to get a feeling around a certain area and sense it. The idea is with these, everybody can see it, and out of one person's mind that is sensitive enough to perceive, everyone can basically use that. And it got kind of out of hand, but everything's for the most part under control. So the energy of one mind, their thoughts, could be seen in the system as if it is like taking a flashlight and putting it underwater to see all the rays. Instead of the rays of light, these are brain waves and thought impressions. And instead of water, this is a techno-neurological soup that is used to communicate openly and visualize non-corporeal entities. There would be, yeah, so there's a little bit more written on that. Yeah. So they opened up various fields of frequencies, various certain actions, repeatable patterns for communication across the dimensional barriers. So similar systems have been used to produce simulacras, which can enable simulated communication to beings who have lived previously and possibly actually communicate to the past. So bands of frequencies that exist as perception and experience first begin as a single uniform undifferentiated field of energy. Thus, when one learns to tap into that field, firstly, instead of first responding or engaging with whatever energy or idea is present, one can actively use their mind to shape reality. Meaning, with these systems, and you just can see the result instantly, one can create reality, you can manifest reality. You can use your conscious mind to do that. This happens anyway, you just can't see it vividly in front of you unless you do it for 2-3 weeks straight, and that's all you do. If you do it for half your life, your entire life is going to be based upon the fact that you've created your reality for you. And the point is, we all do that anywhere. Anywhere. We can't like get out of the system that's automatically doing that, and it seems as if that's all life is. This type of feedback system where it consistently occurs like that.